Welcome to Inspire, the Angel Flores podcast, where you'll be inspired, equipped, and entertained.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you for being on my podcast. We have done this conversation 1,000 times, and now we're going to do
official.
it. Yeah, so it's going to be recorded, so try and censor yourself. I'll try and censor myself.
Right.
So let's start out with your story. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Go to school? All that kind of stuff.
Born and raised in Colorado. Actually born in Pueblo, and then moved up to, and at the time I was out in the country right between Erie and Lafayette.
Okay.
And spent
How old when you guys moved?
Young, 2, 3, and so I was there from 2. Long
What
enough.
brought your dad to Erie?
So what brought us to Colorado, his dad was in the Army, so Fort Carson down in Colorado Springs. And then when he got out, so he was Vietnam vet. And when he got out, they bummed around down south for a while, and then a job, I think it was Target. A job brought him up to. We lived in Nile for about a year, and then we moved kind of between Lafayette and Erie, and then was there ever since. And they actually just sold the house. Well, I guess it's probably about 10 years ago now, maybe even more than that. But so they lived there for a while after me and my brother graduated. So brother, 2 years younger. Erie Elementary, kicked around. Then we went to Niwot High School, up to Eastern Wyoming Community College for a year, and then all my rest of the time I spent at Colorado State University.
What took you to Eastern Wyoming?
Rodeo scholarship. So I was rodeoing in high school, and funny story, I thought it was a rodeo scholarship based on my ability. But I found out after my first semester it was actually an academic scholarship.
Where they would let you rodeo?
Yeah, exactly. And my academics that semester weren't so good.
First semester in college.
Yeah, so that scholarship got pulled. So that was slightly awkward conversation with my coach.
What event? What rodeo event?
I team roped and I calf roped.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So then you ended up back at CSU.
Yeah, so I spent that year up there, and I got my grades back. I got a 4.0 that second semester, and then just jumped down to CSU to be back close to home. And then at the time too, it was CSU had the veterinary program, and I think anyone who's in agriculture usually like the dream job is to be a veterinarian.
Yeah, large animal.
Yeah, exactly. It has all at the time, the mystique, the allure. And then once you get into it, you just find it's just a grind, man. Those large animal veterinarians, it's a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, and at the time, the pay really isn't that.
So I always thought that the big money would be in large animal vet because there's so much money tied up into livestock. It's it's such a big deal, right? But a vet told me that's not true.
No,
it's just a number to them. So they don't care if the animal. I mean, they care, but they don't really care about keeping this animal alive. It's just there's a price tag to it.
Yes, for the most part there is. If you look at it as a business standpoint, but if from a husbandry standpoint, there is some association, but the money's just not there. I mean, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
And then
what's husbandry? I've never heard that.
That's just husbandry. So raising an animal with care, with the animal's best benefits in mind, right? They're part of the family.
Okay, yeah. This vet told me that's where the money is in small animal, in pets.
Oh yeah,
because there's
disposable
an emotional
income.
Attachment to it. Yeah, there's disposable income. So yeah, I was surprised by that. I thought it'd be in like show horses and
maybe it's probably not even the 80-20 rule. It's probably about the 95-5 rule. I mean, if you get the right practice and you have the right clientele, you can be highly successful. But for the average guy just out there grinding it on the plains, that's all they're doing. And
inseminating cows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, they work hard. They work hard for the money. I'll put it that way.
Okay, so then you went to CSU thinking maybe vet.
Yeah, and then so that allure kind of faded, and then I just sat down one day and I was like, all right, what's the quickest way to get out of here? So I went through the course catalog.
What so many college students end up doing.
Right.
That's how they end up in communication.
Yeah. And I could graduate from CSU in 3.5 years with a microbiology degree because I took so many science courses. that's what I ended up doing.
Okay.
So I graduated microbiology. I didn't really have an affinity for it. It was just, that's the path of least resistance to get my degree as soon as possible. And I graduated 3.5 years. And then it was funny because I was still, at the time I was coaching the rodeo team at CSU with my advisor. So I was kind of co-coach, but my advisor was the official coach. Maybe I was the undergraduate coach or however you want to put it. And we were sitting on the fence at the last rodeo of the season. And he asked me, what are you going to know? The great pondering question. So what are you going to do next, Jeremy?
I'm just trying to get to I'm trying to get to May.
Yeah. And I gave the typical, 20-year-old boy response. I don't know.
Why are you always hassling me?
Exactly, right?
You sound like my mom.
This is a very deep question, man. I'm not ready to do this. And he said, well, I've got some money. I got a graduate grant and I've got some money. He's like, if you ever thought about getting your master's degree, you can do it, under me. So I thought, again, path of least resistance. Well, I got an offer on the table right now. Let's do it.
Okay.
So that was,
don't have to make any big decisions for a couple more years. So.
Exactly. So that one was in reproductive physiology, right? So kind of my micro degree kind of was the foundation because of all my lab. Yeah. And I went there and then I that was another 3.5 years of school. So from 93 to 2000, I finally graduated with my master's degree in 2000.
Okay. And then what?
And then, the way I put it is, I was just a single male for a while, right? Just hanging out with my buddies, running around, go to the bars a little bit, go to some rodeos. I had no responsibility and just treated life like it.
That was during your master's?
After my master's.
Oh, okay. Were you working? Were you?
Yeah, I worked for a company that sold, it's called PR Pharmaceuticals. They sold immobilization drugs for wildlife. So the dart guns, they made and manufactured the drugs that they put into dart guns that immobilize like wild animals that you see out on the plains.
So if there's like a cougar up in a tree that they want to bring down.
Exactly. Or maybe they want to tag some deers and check out their migration patterns.
So that is real. Those guns are real.
Yep. I got one. They're actually.
You have one?
Yeah.
Do you have any darts?
Yeah, but they're so old. But I'll bring it in just to show you it. It's just a blowgun, right? And it's run off the CO2 cartridges like you get for pellet guns.
Okay.
And it's just
to your knowledge, has a human being ever been hit with one of those?
I don't.
Can't say that
no, I don't know. I don't.
Record?
No. Yeah, exactly right. But like loose, we have darted like cows that got out. I've done that for friends before.
Okay.
Like
that's a huge animal.
Yeah, you get the right drugs and just dart them, and then they just lay down and you just put them in the trailer. It's actually very peaceful, and you're not roping them, and you're not chousing them around. They just lay down, put them in the trailer.
Interesting.
Bring them back to the pen, and let them wake up. And
10-year-old Angel Flores would have went wild with one of those things. My teacher. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and those guns were actually manufactured. It's called Dan Inject. They were manufactured in Denmark, so I got to go to Denmark for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
To learn how they're manufactured. And we drove around Denmark because he showed me all the different manufacturing facilities. So that one was pretty cool.
I would ask you questions about Denmark, but I don't really know about Denmark.
Yeah, it's
wooden shoes, but that's Holland.
Yep. Denmark is, if you ever get a chance to go, beautiful country. They all know English, right? They're multilingual, but most of them know English. Very friendly to get around. Beautiful country. People are just great. If you ever get a chance, it's a phenomenal country to.
So then did that for a while.
And then I actually shod horses for a while. Again, single guy, no responsibility because it's cash. That was hard on my body. And then then I got the girlfriend.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Here comes responsibility.
Here comes growing up.
Right. So I got married. And then you start thinking, all right, I got a family. I need to start support. And then, of course, ultra conservative, just from a life perspective. Like, all right, well, I need to have some backdrop, some safety nets. So let's go get a job that has good insurance, that has a retirement plan.
Growing up, yeah.
Constant income. And yeah, right, exactly. Our paths never crossed today. Okay, yeah. So I went, and then I kind of started using my micro degree. I worked at that Warren Labs, just right north of the beef plant there in Greeley, Warren Analytical. So I worked there as a QC microbiologist for a year. And then I was talking to my friend there, and he wasn't really my boss, but he was in upper management. I didn't float up underneath him, we're kind of talking, and he asked me one day, well, why don't you go get your PhD? I was like, I never thought of it. And so I did some looking around, and I contacted one of the professors at CSU, and he says, this was November, October-ish. And he says, okay, you start January 1st. And I was like, well, I kind of want to have this conversation with you so I can plan it out. And he's like, no, you start January 1st. Okay.
All right.
And at the time, John Solfos was his name. And he still is just world renowned, just world class. So you get those kind of opportunities, and you just, like he says, just go with it.
In hindsight, you look and you see it was meant to be, but in the moment, it was just like, okay.
Yeah, there's this wave that you ride through life.
Yeah.
And as long as you just stay on this wave, you might go left, you might go right, but as long as it's pushing you forward, your history is definitely pushing you forward to this point in time.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always been. And I don't fight the wave too much. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. You want to go to graduate school? Yeah, okay, sure. Okay. You want to get your PhD? Sure. Let's go do that.
That's interesting. So not a lot of analysis. Let's just say yes.
Yeah.
I think of it. I think of life as like a spider web, where you're walking. I mean, it's got all these little branches, and right, and it feels very right or left. Doesn't seem like it's a big decision.
No,
I'll go right. I'll go left. I'll go right. And then looking back, you see, well, those were monumental moments.
Sure.
That in hindsight, I see how big they were going to.
Yeah.
What if you guys wouldn't have been leaning on that fence that day?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think about that all the time. There's just those point in times that have a major effect moving forward, but you don't realize it at the time. And have you ever been there in life? You're like, okay, I just made that decision. In 10 years, is it going to be a big one, or is it going to be a little?
Am I ever going to remember this, or is this going to be like a core memory now,
or to bring it back to something like we just saw the multiverse.
You saw, yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about, right? There's all these different areas you could go.
The paint planet was, I was like, stay there a little bit. Let's check that out. Yeah,
exactly. But just one tiny decision, different decision.
And it changes everything. Yeah. It's dominoes that fall in one direction or another. Right. So cool.
And you can plan stuff, but as you can kind of tell that,
the
only reason why I plan something is because I know that's not how it's going to be.
Right? Yeah. But again,
there's going to be a deviation.
You have to have a plan. You have to have some.
But you've done the research.
Here's
to
where
move
I'm going.
Forward. Yeah, exactly. You've done the research.
But I'm open to, like when I started jiu-jitsu, I had no idea walking into the gym that day what a big effect it would have on my life. How it would become such a core part of my life. But in the moment, it just seemed like, let me just try this and see what happens.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. You make a little tiny movement in jiu-jitsu, and sometimes it leads to you being submitted, and sometimes it just leads to nothing, and sometimes it's the right thing for you to do.
It was the moment. Yeah. Cool. So then you go to grad school. Go start the PhD. So I'm going to read you a statistic I looked up.
Okay.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, about 1% of the U.S. population has a PhD. I read that about the same amount of people that compete in the Olympics have PhDs. So that's a pretty small, right?
Yeah.
But I know you well enough to know that you don't think that that's exceptional, or that you're exceptional for having that. Why do you, what, let's talk about that for a second. Do you think it's exceptional?
No, because I'm too close. I knew this question was coming. I'm too close to it. Right. I've been in the grind. I've done all the work to do it. And I see where I succeed, and I also see my failures. And then of course you're in this pool of people that you judge yourself against. So we might be in the 1%, we might be in the 5%, we might be in the 99%. But when you carry yourself with this group of people, your cohort that I went to school with, right? It doesn't seem exceptional because you're like, oh, that guy right there, he's got it.
He's smart.
Yeah, that dude right there, he's
that
smart.
Girl.
This guy's gone off and now he's leading this company. Right, this girl is now vice president of this other company. And so in that microcosm, you put everything, it gives you a different perspective.
Right. Because you're not comparing yourself against the general population.
No.
That's for you, yeah.
Yep.
And so you don't see anything. I see that. You're just comparing yourself against the people that you're immediately surrounded by. And so if that statistic is accurate, you're in the top 1% of academic elite. But to you, it's just, they're smart. Yeah, I guess I am smart, but I don't think about it.
But on the flip side of that too is I've met so many intelligent people that haven't even, I'll go to the extreme, haven't graduated high school,
right?
Have a high school education, maybe went to high school for a couple of years, and just because they don't have a diploma on the wall,
right?
These are some really bright, intelligent people that just get how to interact with people. They understand business, they understand some sort of technology, and just because a third party hasn't realized them for it with a diploma,
validated that or whatever, right?
Doesn't mean that
because there's a lot of different kinds of intelligence.
Correct.
Memorizing and writing papers and whatever is a demonstration. It's a marker that you have achieved a certain level of intelligence. But yeah, like the guy who can listen to a car engine and say, I know what's wrong with that. He might not have any kind of pedigree, but he is definitely in the top 1% of compared to everybody else.
Yeah. And
at least in that field.
Yeah. Everybody, that's an interesting, probably something we can discuss, but I believe everyone has a certain trait that sets them apart from everybody else. Right. Some might have more. Yeah. Mine, I don't think I'm smart. I think I can grind through things. I can grind through an education. I can do, this is what the teachers say. Here's my syllabus. Here's what I need to do to get this grade to move on. Right. That's all education is just a grind. And same thing with a master's. So PhD, you need to do this, and this, spend so much time in the lab.
All these boxes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to you with the diploma. Yeah. And I can just take that grind. Because it wasn't easy. I'm not going to tell you it was easy for me. There was a lot of times where I wanted to quit. Just because of
those moments in the library. What am I doing?
Exactly.
Why am I doing this?
You have a disagreement with your professor. And that's what it taught me is the thing that I learned most about my PhD is that you just realize, and it's kind of might be a bad outlook, but you're just there to do a job, right? That's what they pay you to do a job. You do the job that they request of you, and then you move on to the next job.
And it's a business too.
Yeah.
They need students. They need X amount of, and it's competitive. I get that. And, grad school for me was difficult and competitive, but I also saw their side of it. Like you guys need us here.
Yeah.
So I remember, maybe you have a memory like this. My first day of grad school, I walked in, we sat down, they got the syllabus out, read through the syllabus. And if you've never been in a grad school environment, those of you that are joining us, the textbooks are not, there's no pictures, there's no graphs.
They're dry.
It looks like a Bible.
It's dry.
It looks just like a dictionary. Very dry, very academic, very focused on a tiny, tiny subsection of this, whatever discipline you're studying. So maybe for me, it's communication. So maybe this textbook is about, rhetoric and public speaking, or maybe it's about written communication. And it's just this minuscule piece of this discipline. Anyway, so we're going through the discipline, the syllabus. After we're done, the professor says, "Does anybody have any questions?" Someone said, "I have a question. I think there's a typo in the syllabus." Because it says we're supposed to read from page 1 to page 168 by next week. And it was like reading the dictionary. And she says, "No, that's not a mistake."
Yep.
Any other questions?
So
that's a gut check moment, man. Like, am I supposed to be here? Is this for me? Is this meant for me?
What I realize, and this is what I realize, I don't know if it's the truth or not, but it's what I thought of is it's a language. When you get that deep into a subject, it's technically its own language. Right. When you get that deep into the science, it's its own language. And that in itself can push people away, or that in itself can confuse people and they don't want to. So I always found that my ability was to take that language and interpret it. And that's where I'm not great at science. I can read something and I can just say, okay, here's what this means, right? statistically, they have to say it this way because the laws of statistics say they have to put the words that way.
But I understand.
Yeah,
what they're
but here's
saying.
what it really means, right? I'll talk to you it this way, and they'll yell at me because I'm not being accurate and correct, but I'm interpreting this the correct way.
You feel like that's your gift.
I always thought that that's what it was, to be able to relate. Because just growing up, I mean, just my background, I mean, we're just doing a lot of group activities. As long as you're relatable, and there's these highly technical people that sometimes actually have a hard time getting along just because they're just not people. Right. I mean, people persons, right? They're people, and they're not people persons. But I can talk their language too, and then I can go. I can
translate it. I can translate it.
Yeah. And just say, all right, here's what you guys are both saying. Here's
the guy working on the shop floor of a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Needs to understand this. So you're going to translate it.
Yeah, exactly.
His language. Yeah. That's cool. That's a type of intelligence for sure. I feel the same way. I take the Bible, which can be intimidating for people or hard to understand or whatever. And I try and make it so that a third grader in the room can understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that's not as easy as it sounds. And
the interpretation, I mean, that's the amazing thing about the Bible is just all the stories is just a different interpretation and different lenses. Like what we talked about, the prodigal son story.
Right, yeah.
I've heard that 20, 50 times in a sermon, and every single time it's different because you pick that. And it's not that long, is it? It's
right, yeah.
But you guys can spend hours giving you a different perspective on it.
And then you talk about the cultural context.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was he speaking to? Who are the audiences? They were in agricultural.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many nuances.
Things, you can bring into it.
All right. So with that in mind, so you would say on that first kind of PhD part, you're a grinder that appreciates, or I wouldn't say appreciates. You didn't say that. I don't put words in your mouth. That is willing to sit down. I've got to write 400 pages this semester. Okay, I'll get there. I'll get it done.
And it's awful. I'm not a good writer at all, but yeah, exactly. Just do what's expected. And then back to the graduate school thing. This is what made me realize that you go in there with like this altruistic thought, like I'm going to change the world. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to further science.
Do that.
Yeah. And the professor looks at you and says, where am I going to get the money for that? I only have money to do this, this, and this. So you're going to do this, this, or this. Pick one of the three.
Yeah. Because there's a lane that they have.
Exactly.
And
here's where the funding comes from. Guess what? You're going to do the work for the funding. Again, you show up, you do your job, they pay you to do it.
Our funders
you move on.
Have these interests.
Yep.
Well, I want to study this. That's wonderful. Maybe after you're out of here, you can do that. But right now, here's what you're doing. Yeah.
Give them what they want and just a little extra so you get more next time.
Cool. Okay. So then let me read you another statistic. Okay. So those of you that are not familiar with jiu-jitsu, Henner Gracie he's the grandson of Helio Gracie, who is kind of credited with taking a style of judo from Japan and creating Gracie Jiu Jitsu out of it, which is Gracie Jiu Jitsu says that it can, one of the selling points, I guess, was that it can level the playing field for the smaller guy. So
he was a smaller guy and had to use leverage and technique to beat the bigger
man. Yeah. And there's story after story, these legends of these small guys in Brazil taking on all comers, and these professional wrestlers and these professional judo guys would show up from Japan to fight these guys in these no holds barred, no limit, no time limit fights in gyms. So that's the history of jiu-jitsu. It's called the general art, which I think is ironic because there's anything but gentle. But so anyway, Henner Gracie is the grandson of Helio, right? So this is what he said about jiu-jitsu. One of the many things he says. He probably started out by saying, guys. Anyway, so he says only 10% of white belts make it to blue belt. So jiu-jitsu has a 5-belt system: white, blue, purple, brown, and black. So when you start out, you're a white belt. He says only 10% of white belts make it to blue belt. And of that 10%, only 1% of them will earn a black belt. So if you do the math, that means that 1 in 1,000 who start become a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So again, that's pretty. So 1% of the U.S. population has a PhD. 1/10 tenth of 1% of jiu-jitsu white belts earn a black belt. So you sit in two very rare chairs that, because we're friends for a long time, I know you don't really think of it that way. So speak to that a little bit, because I've been doing jiu-jitsu 5 years. That's how we met. And I'm a purple belt, so I'm right in the middle. And it is a grind. I mean, those of you that have never tried it, I would tell you to try it. Just try it one time. Just show up at a gym and try it one time. But it is showing up over and over and over, thousands of times. I did the math one day and tried to estimate how many times I've slapped hands with people enrolled.
Yeah.
And my guess was around 2,000.
Oh, easy.
Doing the math. It's a grind. So to go from somehow you were the one of 1,000 people that started, that made it all the way to black belt. Why do you think that is?
I think
you had to deconstruct it.
I think the theme of this is just grinding it out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all it was. I start something and then you just keep going and I enjoyed it. I mean, I actually enjoyed jiu-jitsu.
Right. That's true. That's something to enjoy. But the PhD thing you didn't necessarily enjoy, right? I
enjoyed the people. That experience was okay. Yeah. Right.
It's all right.
I mean, it was good. It was good for,
it's expensive.
It helped me out in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the PhD thing too, that was the other thing. I was on a stipend and in the sciences, they get the grant. So they put you on halftime. So, I worked it off is basically how it came to be. But back to the jiu-jitsu, I would have to say the grind's the only thing. And then you enjoy what you're doing. It has a lot of benefits. I mean, I was at the age, I started middle to late 30s, and then all the stuff from grad school kind of working on me mentally. And I just knew there just needed to be a healthy release from that. Mm. And that's what jiu-jitsu was at the time. It was a healthy release, physically active, mentally. It was just a godsend. Just to be on the mat with people, talking, the interaction. I did the same thing too. I got my blue belt and then quit for maybe about a year, 6 months to a year, right? The blue belt blues.
Yeah, a lot of blue belts do that.
Yeah.
A lot of them quit, yeah. Because it's so hard.
It's your first major achievement.
Yeah, and a lot of guys are like, that's enough. Like, this was so hard. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
You get to the first, little part of the peak of the mountain, and you look up and there's 4 more mountains to go, or 3 more mountains to go. And it's overwhelming. It's daunting. Yeah. I remember when I got my blue belt too, I was like, okay, do I want to, because this would be a respectable place to stop. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, anybody who does jiu-jitsu or knows, the story of the UFC and the Gracies would know. Yeah. Okay, you got a blue belt. That's pretty significant.
Well, you know everything you need to know by that. By the time you get your blue belt, you actually know 90% of the stuff you need to know.
Fundamentals, at least.
The next is just refinement. It's just amazing. And refinement and incorporating it into your own unique style.
Yes. Which is big.
Mm-hmm. It's huge. Yeah, it is. It's a big step, but it's really not that big of a step, I guess is the way to put it.
You just keep showing up and you do keep getting better. But it's a grind though. Yeah. So you would say, I think the reason I keep showing up because I enjoy the grind.
Anymore here lately, I don't, because I'm just hurt all the time.
Yeah, it's hard on the body for sure. Yeah.
What I appreciate now is just the mental aspect. Going there, it's my community, it's my friends, it's my support group. So I show up our Friday morning. Right? Yeah. We've been doing that for 3 years now.
3 or 4 years. Yeah.
It's just your community. It's people that I guess I do. After you talk to them a while, you find commonalities. Mm-hmm. But I would not have. I mean, you just might as well just randomly pick 5, 6 different people and just throw them into a room and say, get along. Because there's no other reason for us to be united. Or there's no other reason for me to be here, with you outside of then jiu-jitsu. And then you get to jiu-jitsu, you meet these people with these different backgrounds. You find commonalities. You learn their perspectives and their strengths and their weaknesses. And it's just a wonderful thing. Like, I wouldn't be here without jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't be here with you.
People's families. And then you start finding out other stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's hard. Once you start raising your family that you have to be so focused on it. I think I've been thinking about that a lot lately. you lose something. I think you lose a lot of extracurricular involvement with others when you start a family because you have young kids and that's your total focus.
Right. Yeah. Which it should be.
Yeah. Of
as
course,
it should be,
most definitely should be. And I think that's what helped me with jiu-jitsu. My son at the time was he 6, 7,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at that age, just high active, high energy. It was jiu-jitsu was a release for me, a healthy release.
Yeah.
And not saying that anything wrong with the family. It's just right. You just
there is
an outside involvement.
There's an aspect of jiu-jitsu that I didn't expect, and it's the mental chess part, where it's not just grappling. I'm not just going to try some moves on you. You're not just going to do some moves on me. We're playing chess with our bodies, and so I'm going to reach for that ankle, and I'm going to see if you know what to do, and then you're going to see if I know the counter to what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're playing a complicated game of chess. To me, that's more intriguing than the physical part sometimes, because the physical part is just my ribs hurt, my hands hurt, my
hips hurt,
my knees hurt. I mean, it's so hard on the body. But I show up for the mental part sometimes.
That's exactly.
We're gonna play chess with each other and see who knows more.
Yeah,
and then of course you get in there with a 25-year-old kid.
Yeah,
who knows some chess. I mean, this is not going to end well for me.
But that's mental too, right? You get some 25-year-old bodybuilder or even get some college kid from UNC coming over, some football player thinking he's going to put the hammer down on you.
There's nothing more satisfying, guys.
And you just choke him and then you just walk off the mat with your chest puffed up, looking at everyone. That's right. The old bull is still.
I did that 2 weeks ago to a college UNC football player. And
the old bull still has it.
Yes. My favorite thing to ask is, how old is your dad? Oh, I'm older than your dad, and I just choked you out. I just tapped you out. That is a good feeling.
The old bull still has it.
Okay, so the work you do, microbiology, right? You work in food safety.
Yeah, food safety. So food micro.
Do the layman's explanation of what you do.
So I used my micro degree and my lab experience in my first 2 degrees to go back to CSU and get my degree in animal science. Well, that's the department it's in, but the focus on food safety, food microbiology. So basically what I do is I provide technical service for the food industry, meat packers or even produce packers, to help them keep pathogens out of their product. So the E. coli 0157H7, the
pathogen is
and Listeria.
Bad.
A pathogen would be a harmful bacteria that, if consumed, will make you seriously ill, may even hospitalize you, and in some cases may lead to death. Right?
Got it.
So my whole goal is to provide technical services so plants can operate and produce a nice, clean, wholesome product that's free of pathogens on the product, and also, clean their environment as well, to clean their plants sufficiently so the plant itself or the process doesn't contaminate the product as it comes through.
Because if the plant is not clean, then those pathogens are going to grow in any probably warm, damp environment.
Correct.
And then they'll make their way onto the...
So simply put...
cross-contamination and
So simply put, the harmful bacteria, and I mean, it's everywhere. It's part of life. They're in the environment. They're everywhere.
Are we carrying it right now?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we're carrying it, but like outside, you'll find Listeria monocytogenes, which is very harmful. E. coli, and especially in agricultural communities, you're going to find E. coli and Salmonella. They're fecal based.
Okay.
You're going to find those. So
in what? Cow?
Yeah,
manure?
cow, water, cow manure, even birds. I probably walk outside and all the birds, you'll find salmonella out there.
Huh.
So the whole deal is just to make sure it doesn't get on the food.
Okay.
And people don't eat it and people don't get sick.
So is there in this work, is there anything or any place you won't eat?
Okay. So
you don't have to name
learn
names.
that...
Or you can.
Yeah. No.
We can get canceled
in
the first week. Welcome to the Angel
I don't
Flores
work with many
podcast.
retail.
We got canceled.
Yeah, I don't work with any retail establishments. But it's funny you ask that because you have to disassociate yourself from your work in order to enjoy food.
I could see that.
Yeah, right. If I carried my work with me everywhere I went, I
major
would not,
downer on a date.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what that could have.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to eat that?
Yeah. So just hope that it's warm when it's served and you're good. Okay. But then again, yeah, I always preface that too is I'm a healthy individual. I'm not immunocompromised. Right. So my odds of getting really illness are very low. But there is a subset of the population, the elderly, the infirmed, that really need to,
be careful.
Yeah, be careful.
How? Be careful how?
Like food preparation.
Food.
Yeah. Food prep. Yeah. Make sure it's pasteurized.
What is, I don't know what pasteurized means.
They heat it enough to kill the bacteria.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I remember there was some non-pasteurized cold pressed juice.
Yep.
And a little girl drank some. She was 4 years old. I remember that. And she died.
Yep. That was like in Washington State. I won't name it.
I thought it was in Colorado.
It might have been. That's the thing. If you go on the USDA website or the FDA website, recalls, they're all the time. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if you really want to freak yourself out about food, just go to those websites and look up.
I do not
type in recalls.
Yeah.
And
I just want to live in ignorance is bliss.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So that's what you're trying to avoid or keep people from.
Yeah. You want to make sure that the food or food products are pastured sufficiently for their safe consumption. So when you talk about those groups that are, immunocompromised, are at risk, you want the pasteurized juices, the pasteurized milk. You want the, the ready to eat foods. And sometimes even then that's a listeria problem. Heat them up before you eat them. You want stuff to be cooked to a sufficient temperature before being served.
Wait, hold on, back up. What foods could have listeria that if I don't like Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, exactly.
Corn dogs? Like, what do we?
Yeah, no. Corn dogs maybe.
Listeria?
What's
meat?
That? The environment. So yes, the meat does, but it's usually cooked out.
Okay.
And then so with listeria, the main concern is contamination after what we call the cooking step or the lethality step.
Okay.
And that's usually environmental. And that's kind of where my job comes in, making sure the environment is clean and we don't get cross-contamination
onto the food.
So that's like listeria is huge. The reason why is because if you were to come, if a pregnant female were to come down with it, it has like a 20% fatality rate for the newborn infant. Yeah, for the baby. So you don't see it much out there, but those that do get sick with it, it's not
really
good.
sick.
Yeah,
so
really
listeria is you get what? Diarrhea, you get
all the above, flu-like symptoms, right? All the foods.
And what food most commonly is associated with?
On anything that's unpasteurized, like unpasteurized cheese is huge. But the problem is here's the numbers. Like I think hot dogs
cheese in the U.S.
What's that?
Do they?
No. I think it's
in Mexico. They do it.
Yeah. You can, but it's not. You can't have. It won't be. It's not regulated. Right. It would be an unregulated production. Some
back alley.
Right. Exactly. That's
moonshine.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cheese making operation in the hills of Tennessee. Is that such a thing?
Yeah.
What's that? I mean,
I don't know.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Okay, so cheese. What else?
Ready to eat, like luncheon meat. Well, see, I have to preface this.
Yes.
I think I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think hot dogs. But here's the deal: the chances of getting listeria from a single hot dog is really, 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 really low.
Okay.
But when you multiply that by the consumption rate, it becomes one of the top.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
but we eat so many of them that
exactly what I'm trying to do is I'm not fear and dread, right?
Let's not create a panic.
Yeah, exactly. There's no panic
because it's a cheap meal at Sam's Club.
If you eat them out of the package, right? If you run them across the grill, you're fine. If you just take them out of the package, just eat them raw. Well, they're already cooked, so that's not really. That's a ready to eat meat, so they're not raw. But you run them across the grill and you're fine.
Right.
That's the whole deal. Just cook your food, and you're good to go.
Okay.
But the government doesn't look at it like that. They look at it like this is what you're giving to the consumer, and this must be healthy to eat. If you're saying it's ready to eat, it must be.
We're going to assume that no one's cooking any of this.
That's
stuff.
exactly what the government does. So they put the onus on the food manufacturer that you must provide a safe.
Which is what we do in the U.S.
Yeah, right.
Like we never blame the end user, right? Some dummy. I don't want to go on a rant there, but yeah.
Well, it just
we've become a nation of we're children.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I'll go on your rant with facts. So in the 80s, salmonella was a big deal.
Okay,
but that went to court.
Undercooked chicken.
I think this one was beef. This was beef. Salmonella on raw beef.
I didn't know that.
On raw beef. That went to court, and basically the court found that a typical housewife would prepare it. I'm using those words, right?
Wow.
That's not PC right now. A typical housewife could prepare it sufficient enough to eliminate the risk. So
the Angel Flores podcast is not responsible for the
right. Look it up.
Okay, so a typical.
So they put
American
the onus,
housewife.
So they put the onus back on the end user for salmonella. Well, in the 90s, E. coli came around, right? The Jack in the Box outbreak. And the government stepped in and said, nope, not anymore. It's now our job. It's the food producer's job to give you this stuff.
What was the outbreak of Jack in the... I remember that happening.
That was the Washington beef. It was the E. coli 0157H7, and it led to the death of, like several young children.
What were they eating?
It was bad. Ground beef. It was ground beef. So that one was the Jack in the Box. We shouldn't be using... that establishment was cooking burgers at the time, to what they thought was safe levels. And it was the recognized safe levels. They were cooking hamburgers on a grill.
Like to 100 and...
Yeah, like 50, I think, 150, 155. And that was what was considered safe at the time. But it turned out it wasn't.
So they were doing everything they were supposed to be doing. But as it turned out, that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So what is it now, 170?
165.
Okay.
165. It is a safe number. I'd have to check specifically what it is, but it's about 165. And that's why you go to most of these establishments and then they'll ask you, right, you can't get a medium rare hamburger, or it's tough to find a medium rare hamburger anymore.
But I mean, would you eat one? How do you order your burgers?
I like a medium rare. And one time I got one that was pretty rare and it tasted really good, but then I kept the food safety guy in the back of my mind was like, just counting the days that's going to happen.
I like a medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing the countdown.
I took my notes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay.
I took my notes and I put my diary.
Yeah. Cause when I order a steak, I like it medium.
Yeah.
And so I've done that with burgers before, but there's always that dang, is this worth
But steak,
the risk?
you're fine because they call it's it's
because
not
it's
intact.
captured.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be on the outside. So you just,
but hamburger meat is ground. And so
it's all intertwined and it's inside and you have to cook it thoroughly.
Interesting. Cool. All right. So I want to hit on one other thing, and then I have two more questions and we're done. During COVID, you and I had some conversations, and this will probably get this podcast muted, but about how COVID was making itself weaker in order to sustain its life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Explain that a little bit, because that to me was so interesting, because that's what we're seeing happening even today. I read today that Omicron B412, whatever, is starting to fill up hospitals again in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a weaker strain. So explain how that happens, because I thought that was interesting.
So if you look at most of these viral outbreaks, and you could even go to West Nile, like in the animal world, or even humans for COVID, because we're so familiar with it. But I think this is where you want me to go, is a virus is an organism that just wants to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it kills its host, it also
dies,
kills itself.
A virus doesn't have a brain.
No, it doesn't. It's just packed DNA.
What makes this so fascinating? Keep going.
Yeah, it's just packed DNA.
Okay.
And so it has to transfer from one living organism to another living organism just to perpetuate
it cannot
itself.
live on its own.
Exactly.
And
typically, like in the environment, a couple hours, like even for COVID, 2 to 3 hours, it's
on a surface or something, and it's dead. Yeah.
And they're really finding now that, surface contact isn't really a very
remember
good
reading that,
route
yeah.
of transmission. But it just wants to survive. So what it'll do is, there's so much DNA replication that they constantly mutate, right?
Mm.
And then and basically the benefit, just like humans, like any other organisms, the beneficial mutation stays, right? And the beneficial mutation usually is living, life, perpetuation.
Right. Yeah. That's the ultimate benefit. Stay alive, yeah.
So it will mutate so it can just self-perpetuate. And then ultimately, what we find is it's just less harmful to the host, because that's just the best way it can mutate and self-perpetuate itself through a population. And if you go through the West Nile virus, I remember it came sweeping across from the east, and this was back in the maybe 2000s. And it mainly affected horses, right? And
through the mosquitoes.
Yeah, through the mosquitoes.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
And the humans were getting it too, right? West
Getting
Nile,
really sick.
bad. It came from the east. It kind of went up north, and then as soon as it started pushing itself down south to Mexico, they were just seeing it was just kind of the illness of it was just
mild.
Yeah, it was mild.
So they did the same thing.
Yeah.
It weakened itself so that it wouldn't kill.
Yeah, well, I guess you could say weakened. I think it just mutates to where it can last and it can
keep
live
the sucker
longer,
alive,
right?
because it'll help me spread.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID has mutated so that it's become less lethal and more transmissible.
Yeah, I would say it that way. Yep.
Interesting, but without a brain.
Mm-hmm. Without a brain, it uses the cellular mechanisms, and it's just same mutations that you get with bacteria and humans.
So many questions. How does it know it's being effective?
It doesn't. It's just, like I said,
so it's shooting off all of these different mutations at the same time to see what keeps it alive. And the ones
yeah, I just think of it more as a dice. I don't think it does it purposely. It's just random chance. I mean, through any DNA replication event, there's just a random chance that a nucleic acid gets switched, and that point mutation might be lethal, and it might be beneficial, and it might not have any effect whatsoever.
Just see what happens.
Yeah. It's just random chance. It's the best way to look at it. And then sometimes by random chance, like we were talking, that little tiny decision right there, all of a sudden has a huge.
Right. Yeah.
Right. If you want to bring the whole conversation full circle.
And so as a pastor, thinking about this through a theological lens, I would say that the world in the Garden of Eden was spoiled, and the result of Adam and his sin coming into the world created these devious. Because it seems for a virus to be able to do that seems by design. Like it blows my mind that it can do that. So anyway, that's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great. So think of the Reformations, right? Luther, Calvin, these guys weren't the only people to reform the religion or have the ideas to reform, but they stuck.
Yeah.
Right. You can go the other way too. Yeah. You can go the other way too. Mm-hmm. But I'm not too educated. Mm-hmm. But you get these religious sects that are just
cults.
Cults. Yeah. Right. But for some reason, whatever decision or whatever little mutation they made stuck. Mm-hmm. And others didn't.
And it caught on, and it was, I mean, part of it was the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Like, is the market ready for this? When Martin Luther nailed his thesis to the Catholic Church, that was such a big move. I don't know if his thesis would have caught on if he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can talk about the specific event.
The atmosphere, the environment. Whereas
he for sure wasn't the only guy to ever say, all right, we need some
wrong. Yeah.
we need some reformation here, guys.
But maybe because of what he did and how he did it, versus I'm thinking of like, what's his name? Waco, the cult, David Koresh.
Yeah.
You're right. He kind of mutated Christianity too in a weird way. And it was a harmful way. Yeah. And then it ended up at a dead end because people were like, this is not sustainable. This is crazy. And if we do believe in this, well, our guy is dead.
Yeah.
So this is the end of that chain. It's an interesting way to look at it. Biology. Cool. All right. 2 more questions.
Okay.
One, are you successful?
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm successful.
What does that word mean to you?
Well, I can provide. I have a family. I can provide for them. We have shelter. We have. I would have to say not a lot of disposable income, but we have disposable income. Right.
Do the things you want.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. definitely not extravagant lifestyle, but we want to go see an Avengers movie
on Saturday. Yeah.
I can get the large bag of popcorn.
This is how we gauge success.
Right, exactly. Right.
I don't have my own dog. Yeah, sneaking that in from Sam's Club. That's what I do.
Yeah,
but
I don't
anyway.
have my own movie theater in my house. I still have to go to the movie theater. but yeah, I would say.
Then in a financial sense, for sure, right? And you could definitely say I'm successful. What about in terms of so right now I know you're working on your MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So again, rare man, and I know you don't see it that way, but how many people have a PhD, a black belt, and an MBA? That's got to be in the minuscule percentile. So you're still chasing and pursuing something, right?
Yeah.
So why would speak to that? Just enjoy the grind.
Well, that one's kind of, again, riding the wave, seeing where the wave takes you. Right? I'm in corporate America, and I'm the tech on the kind of on the tech side, the R&D side of things, and I realize that there's a ceiling to that where I can go. And I also realize too, I'm pretty good from a scientific standpoint, but I don't know the business language. Like, yes, I can get it. My version of making wealth and making money is going to go get a job and having someone pay me. Right.
Selling your hours.
Yeah, selling my hours. Having someone going to get a job that has health insurance, going to get a job that has good benefits. Right. That's how I monetize my
your talent.
Yeah. But I don't know that far side of that, the business aspect of it. I can't speak that language. And so if I want to learn that language and I want to go out on my own, or if I want to learn that language and then jump over to the business side of things and further my career, I just need to know business. And so, again, it's just MBA. My work will give me so many credit hours a year, and I'll just take them and I'll just go
apply them to that.
Yeah, I get that. So again, for me, it's not I don't think it's a really big decision. It's just the wave has pushed me there, and it's an opportunity. So let's just see where it goes. And it just might be 3 other letters that I forget to put on the end of my name at the end of the day.
Or it could be a life-defining move.
Yeah, I might be, having lunch with Elon Musk in 2 years.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I just listened to him on the Joe Rogan podcast. I thought he's very smart.
Yeah.
Kind of boring, but very smart, but interesting. But he's hard for me to follow because he gets so deep into the technical weeds for me that I was just like.
And they're like a guy like that. I see that guy, and there's no way I can talk. Just last week, I was with our vice president of RD&E globally, and a business development manager, the guy that works on mergers and acquisitions for my company, and they start talking about scanning electron microscopy. And I'm just completely just out of this conversation. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Well, you see what they do on this technique is they change the reagents to do this, this, and this, and they kind of focus. And I'm like,
have you guys seen the new Avengers?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
It humbles you. It doesn't matter what I have, how many degrees I have, and how smart I am. You're always humbled by someone you meet.
Jiu-jitsu too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely days when I feel like I've reached a certain level. And then there's days when I'm like the low guy in the room. And but I think that's healthy. We need that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
We need those moments where we feel like the smallest fish in the pond, because that makes us aspire to improve and to get better.
But what we also need too is we need to have that feeling of being the big fish in the pond as well too.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be some sort of reward and payoff for your hard work.
Yeah.
And it only comes through that. You either make yourself the big fish in the pond, or you go find yourself a pond
where you are the big fish. Yeah.
Right. But no, it's both sides of it. I think there's definitely something to that.
Yeah. I mean, there's that whole, that leads to the kind of a conversation on ambition. What is that? How much of it is healthy? How much of it is, how much am I just trying to check the boxes of my 3rd grade teacher told me I was dumb or whatever, right? We're like, we all have to figure out that, who we are and feel comfortable with who we are. And then, all right, now what am I going to do? I always say the 3 big questions in life. Where did I come from? Why am I here? What's going to happen to me when I die? And so if we don't have that kind of piece about who am I and why am I here?
No, I completely understand
restless.
Jiu-jitsu, why people don't hang with it. I mean, you get beat up for 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, every single day.
Yeah,
If someone
it is.
just
It's true. Yeah.
But then,
Not a
then
great
all of a
selling
sudden,
slogan.
yeah, between
Come in here for the first 6 months. You're going to get beat up.
Yeah. But then somewhere between 6 and 9 months, you get that first
Something
submission.
clicks,
You're like,
yeah.
hey, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I just tapped somebody
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Maybe here in another month or two, I'll get another
Yeah.
one.
I don't remember their names,
Yeah.
but I was probably in it 6 months, maybe longer. And I tapped 2 guys in the same night.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, it's this starting to make sense now. I'm not just the grappling dummy. I'm doing something. Yeah.
I remember my very first reverse. So a reverse is a move to where you're on the bottom and then you just switch them and then you're on
Mhm.
top. Like it was yesterday on the kid.
You swept
And then that
somebody.
was the moment where it just kind of clicked and you're like, okay. Because, the first couple of months you just learn moves, you're not doing. Then all of a sudden you get that first one and it works. You're like,
This really works. This
it
stuff
does.
works. Yeah.
It really, really does.
Yes. Cool. Last question. Where have you seen God in all of it? In the grind of it, in the PhD journey, the jiu-jitsu journey, your life? Where have you seen God working in all that?
That's a great question. This one I should need to prepare for. So off the
I
cuff,
sent you the list, but
Right.
anyway.
we'll talk about that over lunch. Okay, so I guess.
Sitting in the pastor's office.
Yeah, exactly. I think God's been there all along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's given me anything beneficial, but he's given me the tools that I could either take and use, or I don't, right? I don't think
Handed you
he's been there to
opportunities.
make me successful, right?
Yes.
Like the football team, like I didn't pray to him before my
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu match
Uh-huh.
and then think that he failed me after I got submitted and
Yes.
lost, right? But I think he's just always been there as a source of comfort, knowing that, hey, right, we've been in this together.
Uh-huh.
He's been a good coach, right? A good coach really can't teach you anything, but they can guide you. They guide you through life.
That's a good
And
way
I
to
think
look
it's been a good guiding experience. He's been there to kind of show me, to help me identify what works and help me identify what hasn't worked.
at it.
And I mean, be honestly, there was a time when you go through your, when I went through my teenage years and my early 20s, where you think, this whole God thing is, you start
Is this
questioning.
even real?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You question religion.
Again, we all have to figure out
Yep.
where did I come from?
Mhm.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then you realize that's unfair. Why are you going to be selfish like that?
Mm.
You have this person who's given you life and has put you in this situation for some reason, right? I mean, who put me there on my fence? You can go random chance by my professor who brought me to Warren Analytical, say, hey, well, you should go get your PhD. Who gave me the strength to walk through the door to a
Gym.
to gym to start jujitsu, right? And
Because that's very intimidating.
yeah. And I think God's there to give you that strength to make those healthy and also unhealthy decisions. But I think with the unhealthy decisions, he also gives you the strength to say, hey, that retrospective look.
That was not the best
Yeah, I don't think
decision
that was that.
there,
Yeah, did we do that?
Mhm.
Was that the right thing? We did?
Yeah.
Let's re-break this through. But I think he's always been there through the journey and as a source of comfort. For
Mhm.
sure, right?
Mm.
As soon as what I found, as soon as you release and acknowledge that there's a greater being out there, it gives you a different perspective on life.
Mm.
You realize that all your efforts, what you're actually working for, towards something,
Right,
or
yeah.
something. And for me, it took away a lot of the selfishness in my life.
I think it gives us a perspective of purpose.
Yes.
Because if there's nothing, if we really are the result of some amoeba
Mhm.
and some amoebic slime coming out of the great goo, and then
Yep.
if that's true, then why are we doing any of this?
Yeah, it
What's
makes-
the-
there's
there's
no
no
purpose to it.
purpose. There's
That's
no
yeah.
point at all.
And then that's when you get the depression and you get
Yes.
into the, so what? This
Yeah.
malaise.
Doesn't
through
matter.
life.
Who
Yeah,
cares?
who cares?
Why not
Doesn't
just
matter.
pursue pleasure? Why not just
Yeah, exactly.
whatever that
Let me
means,
go
right?
be mean to my neighbor. Let me just,
Screw that guy.
go start a fight with
I'm
my
going to go
wife.
take whatever he has.
Yeah, exactly.
But if there is some grand design,
Yep.
if God really did create this, number one, then there's a purpose.
Mhm.
Number two, I'm going to have to give an account for my life someday.
Yep.
And that's an uncomfortable feeling. So oftentimes it's easier just to put it out of our minds, right? Yeah, cool.
I think it's that retrospective look. It's like, all right, why did that happen to me?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's look
Why
back.
me?
Yeah. Why me? Why was I put in this position?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can find and that's the beautiful thing about it. If you can find the positive in it, it might be the worst, worst situation ever, right? The grind, right? Me, I put myself in bad situations. And if for somehow you can find the light and you can, be given the strength to look at it like, all right, how can this be a positive? How am I going to use this to better myself in the future? I think that's key because it's so easy just to quit. It's
even the grind
easy.
in jiu-jitsu, Danny, who runs the farm, I don't know what he walks. I know he's lost a bunch of weight, but I know for a while he's floating around 300, I would guess 300 pounds. He's a big guy, 6'3", maybe 6'2". When he's laying on top of you,
oh yeah.
And he knows how to use his weight to make it even more awful than just a big guy laying on you, right? He's applying pressure. I think to myself, nothing else today is going to be this bad.
No.
So
exactly.
This is probably nobody else today when I'm in line at Home Depot is going to try and do this to me. My day is going to be great. You know what I mean? So sometimes those moments of perspective, it's helpful.
Yeah. Perspective
Suffering
is
helpful sometimes.
Yep.
Because it's like, okay, this gives me some perspective. But
yeah, and then every day, you wake up and you're alive, it's a good thing. It's another day to further define what you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Either for your family, for yourself,
for other people, right?
For God,
make somebody
forever,
else's life a little better. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
You bet.
Thanks for being on.
Hopefully
we'll do it again
from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.